Good afternoon. My name is John Bonina, and thank you for joining us for Frequently Asked Fridays, where if you've got questions, we've got answers. Today, we'll be answering the many questions people have concerning a brand new law in New York State, the Adult Survivors Act. Now, the Adult Survivors Act was just signed into law 3 days ago on Tuesday, May 24th. And I was proud to have been in Albany and lobbying in Albany when the bill was signed into law. The Adult Survivors Act recognizes that it takes time for the victims of sexual abuse and sexual assault to process their trauma, to be able to come forward and speak about their trauma, and to confront their abusers, as well as those who enabled those abusers. Now, big question, what does the Adult Survivors Act do? Well, the Adult Survivors Act will allow adult survivors of sexual abuse to hold their abusers and the institutions which enabled them accountable and liable for the consequences of that sexual abuse, even if the statute of limitations has previously expired. The law does so by expressly reviving claims on behalf of adults who were the victims of sexual abuse and sexual assault, no matter when the statute of limitations expired. It does so by creating a 1-year window within which to bring these claims. Now, that window, under the terms of the law, does not open until 6 months after the bill was signed into law. So the bill was signed into law on Tuesday, May 24th, and that window will officially open on Thursday, November 24th of this year. It will then remain open for 1 year, and during that year, adult survivors of sexual abuse, of people who were sexually abused as adults, have the opportunity to bring claims and hold their abusers and the institutions which enabled them accountable and responsible. The Adult Survivors Act mirrors much of the language of the Child Victims Act, which was passed into law in 2019 and allowed people who had been the victims of sexual abuse as children to hold their abusers and institutions accountable. Now, I was very proud to represent, and it's been my honor to represent countless survivors of childhood sexual abuse, as well as adults who have suffered sexual abuse as well. In fact, I filed the very first complaint under the Child Victims Act. We stayed here at the office till midnight the day the window opened and filed at 12/000/0001 and got the very first index number assigned here in New York City. And that complaint sought to hold the Archdiocese of New York accountable for decades of sexual abuse, for a decades-long house of horrors that they were running at the Mount Loretto Orphanage in Staten Island. And we're continuing to represent many of those survivors and so many other survivors of sexual abuse. I'm also going to be trying one of the very first Child Victims Act cases seeking to hold the Albany Diocese responsible this coming September. In that case, they shuffled around a pedophile priest for over a decade. Even though they knew he was sexually abusing and molesting children every step of the way. And I'll be proud to step into that courtroom and seek to hold the Albany Diocese accountable on behalf of our client. Additionally, given our expertise in this area, I've been asked by bar associations and numerous other groups to lecture to other lawyers to teach them how to fight these cases and advocate on behalf of these survivors. Now, there are some differences between the Child Victims Act and the Adult Survivors Act. For one, the most critical difference is that this is a one-time opportunity and a 1-year window. The Child Victims Act was initially passed as a 1 year window, but was ultimately expanded to a 2 year window because of the COVID-19 pandemic. It's very unlikely that's going to happen here. This is a 1 year window and a one-time opportunity. The other significant difference is that the Child Victims Act then established a 55-year-old statute of limitations for adult survivors of childhood sexual abuse. That is not the case with the Adult Survivors Act. Because this is a one-time opportunity, victims and survivors do need to act to protect their rights if they want to be able to hold the abusers and the institutions which enabled them accountable and responsible. Now, why was the Adult Survivors Act passed? Why is it necessary to extend the statute of limitations and give people from so long ago the opportunity to bring suit? Well, the bottom line is that when someone is subjected to sexual abuse or sexual assault, it takes time to process that trauma. It takes time to be able to speak about the abuse and to be able to address the trauma publicly. It takes time to come forward and confront their abusers and the institutions that enabled them. And for some people, it takes more time than others. Now, some victims fear retaliation or retribution from their abuser. When the abuse occurs in the workplace, as it often does, they fear retaliation from their employer. And when the abuser is a person in power, perhaps a law enforcement official, a politician, or a superior in the work environment, that fear of retaliation is a very real fear. Some victims don't come forward because they feel intense feelings of guilt or shame. What will people think of me? Was this my fault? Do I want anyone to know about these secrets? And these are very real questions that so many survivors continue to grapple with. And to those who feel those feelings of shame or guilt, allow me to say this. It is not your fault. You are not to blame for what happened, and you have nothing to be ashamed of. To those who have already come forward, allow me to say two things. First, you are very strong and very brave for coming forward and speaking out. It's not easy to set aside the fear, the potential shame, the embarrassment of having to discuss what happened to you. And by coming forward, you're showing that you're no longer afraid. They no longer have power over you, and that makes you very strong and very brave. Secondly, to those who have already come forward, thank you. By coming forward and speaking out about your experiences, you're giving strength to so many others who are still afraid, still living in shame and fear and hiding in the shadows. You're showing leadership, and through that leadership and strength, you're showing others that they too can break the powerful grip that their abusers have held over them. So thank you for that. For those who have not come forward, please allow me to say this. The Adult Survivors Act now gives you the opportunity to speak out, the opportunity to confront your abuser, and the opportunity to take back your power, and most importantly, the opportunity to be heard. Every survivor deserves the opportunity to be heard, and now you have the chance. Our message to all survivors is this: we are here for you, and we hear you. We are willing to listen, and we are willing, not just willing, but ready, willing, and more than able to fight this battle alongside you. When you are ready to hold the abuser or the institution accountable, we're here for you. Um, and we're here to help you get retribution and justice for the damage that has been done. Whether it is a powerful politician, a wealthy or influential businessman, an employer or a company that looked the other way, or a school or a fraternity that allowed a culture of abuse to exist, we're here for you. Thank you for joining me today for this edition of Frequently Asked Fridays. And please join us next Friday when my sister and partner John Bonina will be talking to you and answering all your questions concerning what you need to know when you're being called in to testify at a deposition. Thank you once again,